Hi, thank you for joining us today. Today we have a special guest for you, Jill Cohen. Jill is doing something really special. She's a nurse and she has a project that she's starting called Save Restaurants, Feed Nurses. And we're going to be talking to her today about that project. First, I want you to know a little bit about Jill. She grew up in Miami in the 70s and 80s playing tennis, roller skating, and doing aerobics. Oh, I remember that. She went to Emory University and graduated Phi Beta Kappa and earned an MA in English Literature from the University of Colorado. Afterwards, Jill taught English abroad. She taught writing at CU and decided to pursue nursing. She initially wanted to specialize in sexual health education as a public health nurse and fix the whole teen pregnancy problem. However, while earning her doctorate, she learned that hospital nurses get 4 days off every week. So Jill became an ER nurse instead. She worked in Colorado, Wyoming, California, Florida, and Australia. She volunteered in Central America and pedaled as a medic on a bicycle tours across Africa. And after 20 years of an ER career, she recently started a new chapter as an RN on the virtual team at One Medical Group, saving lives from her living room. Jill also volunteers at the Humane Society, travels extensively, backpacks, bike packs, dances, snowboards, teaches fitness, and is a varsity squad friend. Wow. Welcome to the Stay at Home Nurse Podcast. I'm your host, Deanna Cooper Gillingham. For over 25 years, I've strived to use my nurse credentials to find work that fit my lifestyle. Whether it was raising my 4 children and 3 fur babies, traveling the world, or moving to Mexico and living on the Caribbean Sea. Sometimes I succeeded and sometimes I failed, but I always learned from the experience. Now, I want to help you by sharing what worked and what didn't work. There are so many opportunities out there for nurses today. The Stay at Home Nurse Podcast will inspire and equip you to have a nursing career that is meaningful and supports your lifestyle. Now let's get started. There are so many things that I would like to talk to Jill about, but today we're going to focus on one thing, the new project that she's taking on, Save Restaurants, Feed Nurses. Okay, Jill, I'm going to let you take it from here. Tell us, why did you first take on this project?
First of all, Deanna, I just want to say hello and thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so Save Restaurants, Feed Nurses was born out of this pandemic. It's a smaller version of these larger efforts that took place at the beginning of the pandemic. Probably most of you have seen them. They were called Feed the Frontlines, or an incarnation of that name, Feed the Frontlines, where local people who were feeling motivated would enlist restaurants in their towns to bring meals to tired and hungry hospital staff when they were really busy taking care of COVID-19 patients. And these efforts were incredible and they were huge. And the way they fueled the efforts was having people donate at the grassroots level, at the corporate level, at all kinds of levels. And they raised a lot of money to keep restaurants in business and then bring free meals to the hospital staff. And if there are some hospital nurses or former hospital nurses listening, we know how much that helps. Just to know that someone's thinking about you and bringing you something to say, hey, I see how hard you're working and I just want to help you get through your shift. It really does help. I think those efforts were really special. But the pandemic has only gotten worse lately, and those programs have dropped off. And arguably now more than ever, the nurses in the hospitals need the help more, and the restaurants need the help more. It's a time during this pandemic when a lot of people are tired. And so I understand why these things have fallen off. But as you mentioned in my bio, I'm a work from home nurse now, and I'm really grateful for that. It's a really safe job, and it seems to be a stable job. So at this point, I have some bandwidth. I really do. The pandemic is hard. It's hard on me. It's hard on everybody. But I think that as a stay-at-home nurse, it's quite possible that I'm maybe doing a little bit better than other people are doing during the pandemic. So it's a personal sort of thing of mine that when you have it to give, try to give it, see if you can give it. So I have been thinking about this lately as I'm doing my pandemic life, watching a lot of Netflix and doing some pulling the curtains and doing some silly dance videos on TikTok and YouTube. And those activities are great, but I've been feeling lately like I want to do more. I have the time, I have, like I said, the emotional bandwidth. And so I thought, what could I do with my energy here? And I started reaching out to some of my former coworkers who are still in the hospital with the thought that things are probably worse for them now. They're more tired, they're more burnt out, they're more run down than ever, and they're not getting the recognition and the support that they had been getting before. So I did an informal poll. I reached out to a bunch of my friends, and the results were unanimous of my little N equals 17 study that I did. All the nurses in the hospital are feeling the same way. They've all had to take time off. Um, they're all at the end of the proverbial ropes. And then I saw an article in a local newspaper called The Westward, and it was a list of Denver restaurants that have closed because of the pandemic. And I kept having to scroll down the page to look at all the restaurants that had closed. And I thought, this list is way too long. So the combination of my nurse friend, and then of course all the very reputable, reliable sources in the media reporting on the state of hospitals and the state of hospital nurses and staff being at their breaking point, taking care of COVID-19 patients all over the country. So combine all this, and I had this idea to resuscitate, so to speak, those Feed the Frontline's efforts that were taking place at the beginning of the pandemic, because I think they're needed now more than ever. And I thought, though, that I could add a special work from home remote nursing twist to it. Because I thought, and I did another little poll of the other nurses who are working remotely like myself. And I asked them, how are you feeling about your position in the pandemic and your friends that you no longer work with in the hospital? And they all, a lot of them felt the same way that I do, in the sense that they feel for them. They know how difficult it is to be a hospital nurse on a random Tuesday in 2017 when there's not a pandemic going on. So now we put 8, 9 months of backbreaking pandemic work on top of that. We know how tough that is, and we really feel for them because these are people we know and care about. So I thought, what a special thing this could be is if we each organize individual Save Restaurants, Feed Nurses efforts in our own hometowns, where we organize fundraisers to give back to the units where we used to work. And we specifically say to those units, to our friends, hey, we see you, we understand how hard you're working, and we want to support you, and we want to recognize you, and we want to give you this gesture of appreciation in the form of free food, because we all know when you work in a hospital, that's what you need to keep going. So I hope I didn't talk for too long about that, but I think that answers every angle of your question.
No, and I love it. That's exactly what I was looking for. You brought up so many points that I could expound on, but the one I really want to is I think there's something called survivorship guilt or something like that. Those of us nurses who are no longer working at the bedside, and I've heard it mentioned by other nurses also, not just myself, and in the media, that we're feeling guilty that we're not out there with our sisters and we're not fighting this pandemic on the front lines. So we want to
Right.
help them and we don't know how to help them.
Yes. That is exactly where this idea came from, because I was at home feeling that feeling, so the survivor's guilt. But we all know that nice feelings are nice, but guilt isn't really a useful emotion. I think it's part of a process, maybe a stepping stone to get somewhere else. You have to feel your feelings, but stopping there and throwing up your hands or wringing your hands at home, it doesn't do a whole lot. And so really, you nailed it, Deanna. It's what can I do with this feeling? How can I mobilize this feeling into something helpful or something useful. And I'm really hoping it will resonate with a lot of work from home nurses who are feeling exactly as you said, that I know what's happening and I feel something about it, but I don't know what to do. And I think here is something you can definitely do. You can take that feeling and do something really helpful with it. And ultimately, it's going to make you feel better. It's going to help the nurses feel better. It's a reconnection with your friends, and it's helping the local restaurant industry, which we think of it as like a storefront on a street, just the restaurant, but really the restaurant industry is a tremendous. When you help that storefront, you help farmers, you help people who make food on all kinds of levels. I don't know all the economics of it, but I know that it goes beyond even just your storefront restaurant where you go to have lunch or dinner. Yeah, I just really hope this resonates with a lot of stay-at-home nurses and that they'll take on a project in their hometown, and collectively our little individual efforts could really make a big difference and do something with that feeling that we're all feeling.
Yeah, and going back to that feeling, so this podcast is actually being recorded on Thanksgiving Day, and it'll go out the following Friday after, not Friday after Thanksgiving, but a week later. And one of the things that we talk about with depression, and during the pandemic, depression is up. But the studies have shown that one of the best ways that you can help to fight and combat depression is by giving and doing for others. And during the pandemic, it's not as easy. It's not as easy to go out and actually physically help somebody because of social distancing and all of that. But this is a great way to not only help our fellow nurses, and I call them sisters because we are a sisterhood and we take care of each other, and you know how it is when you walk into a place and you meet somebody else that's a nurse, and it's like instantly you have that connection because you're both nurses. And
Yes.
so we can help our sisters, our nurses, but we can also help those restaurants and other people in the community. So that's what I really loved about this, is not just helping one local, one small local area of people, just the nurses, but it's also helping the restaurants in that local community also. It's going back to the local level. And you talked a little bit about, you're doing this in Colorado, but you would like to see it done elsewhere. Okay, let's back up for just a minute. Tell me about the project. Although you make it sound very easy, as a entrepreneur, I know that nothing that sounds easy is truly easy. I have an idea every minute, and then implementing it takes years. So tell us what is it like for you to start this? What are you facing? What are the challenges that you faced and overcame and just kept plowing through?
Oh my gosh, Deanna, you just dropped the reality bomb. Um, so yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be just a salesperson and say, look how easy this is going to be. It's no problem. Because of course it will take a little bit of work. And I would say right there, of course, if it's going to be worthwhile, it's not just going to magically happen. It's going to take a little bit of elbow grease. What I've done though thus far is I've started mine in my town to see what exactly, like you said, what some of the hurdles might be, what some of the difficulties might be, and try to take care of those for the other nurses who might sign on and to anticipate what the problems might be and try to solve them before they start for somebody else. One thing I've done to get ahead of it is putting the language together, let's say actually putting the whole blueprint together is what I've done. I've composed a GoFundMe page. I have written the text for that, and any nurse who wants to sign on, I'm going to make that available to them so that they have a template, a model that they can use, where instead of saying Boulder, Colorado on theirs, they just uh, delete that and put St. Paul, Minnesota, or wherever it is they're doing their project. And so I think one of the hurdles is, how do I word this? How do I say this? How do I encapsulate what I'm doing in a concise story that inspires people to donate to my project? And, I've taken care of that part. Hopefully that's all done. Some of it is get things done ahead of time before you actually want to launch something. The test run idea. I'm working with an artist to get some graphics, a really beautiful image that's meaningful and powerful that captures what we're doing. And that takes time, I'm learning. Good art takes a lot of work to do. So thankfully, I got started with that ahead of time, and hopefully, we'll have the artwork ready to go when we want to launch. So there are things like that that I'm trying to figure out ahead of time. How do you choose a restaurant, for example? So I went through that process. Initially, I approached one friend of mine who owns a restaurant in Boulder, an independent local restaurant, but he's not really in a position to do it for various reasons because of the pandemic. And so I definitely put in my materials what are some of the things you look for in a restaurant, and how can you choose a restaurant that is going to be happy to sign up and easy to work with and ready to go and take your order? Have they pivoted their model during the pandemic? Have they streamlined their delivery process, and can they handle potentially a big delivery order? So that kind of thing, restaurant selection. How do you get in touch with your former boss or your former manager at the hospital where you used to work? That hopefully is a really easy part, because I think with the work from home nurses that used to work in a hospital unit, I think most of, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us have, that should be an easy part because you already have that line of communication open and established. How do you promote these things? And so I've put together some materials, ideas for social media posts, and promoting your fundraiser so that your network of people, of friends and family will donate to it. So I've already put that together. Let me think of what else I've done. Yeah, I've put together the email where you connect your restaurant contact person and your hospital contact person. So all these steps in a process where you think, don't you just order a pizza? And it's not quite that simple. There are a few steps along the way, but I've tried to take some of the difficulties out of it so that work from home nurses, sure, like I mentioned, maybe we have some bandwidth to give, but we're also busy. We're also working really hard. So I wanted to try to make it as easy as possible for them to take on one of these projects and see by looking at these materials that it's doable, and have them be able to take the ball and run with it from there. So yeah, that hopefully that answers your question.
It does. And I really love that you aren't just doing this as I'm going to save a restaurant in Boulder and help the nurses I used to work with. But as you were doing this, you were taking all of the lessons that you learned and you were making it easier, making templates so that other people could do it and basically learn what worked and what didn't work from you, so that when they go, if it took you X amount of hours, it's going to take them maybe 1/4 of the time or maybe even 1/10 of the time, because they have you to guide them. They have a playbook. It's not just, I wonder if I should do this or this. And all of those things that normally stop us because we have a decision to make, you've already said, hey, this is the decision, do this next, this is the next step, which makes it so much easier for everybody else.
Why reinvent the wheel? You can learn from all of my mistakes.
That's actually one of the things that I love doing in entrepreneurship. I listen to tons of podcasts and read books and get coaches and do all of the things because it's like I can 10x my progress by learning what not to do. It's not always learning what to do, sometimes it's learning what not to do. But I digress. So, Jill has done the heavy lifting for you. She has figured this out. She, as we said in her bio, she has, is it an English major, a degree in English?
That is correct.
So you know how to write things so that they get read and that they make sense and that they're clear and concise. And you've done a really good job. I've looked at your GoFundMe page and you do a wonderful job of explaining everything. So you've created a template that
Thanks,
you're
Deanna.
welcome. And I know how long it can take to write something like that. So the nurses that would want to do this in their community, they can just basically use that as a template and plug in their local community and their unit that they're donating to on the in the hospital and those types of things. This is a game changer. You're going to provide those images for them that they can share if they want, or they could use their own, I'm assuming. And
Yes, I think that's, do you mind
no,
if I stop
please,
you right
please
there? I
do.
think that's really important. Yeah, that the materials I've created are optional. I think they could really help and save people some time. It's right there for you. But please, I would encourage any nurse who takes this on to edit, change, to make it your own personal thing so that it feels authentic. It feels like it's coming from you. So, yeah, the materials will be on offer to you. You can use any, all, or none of them. I've got some, because I'm sure you have your articles that you've read on this subject that you would want to post. I have a few, so you don't have to go looking. But if you read an article that you thought was very eye opening and meaningful and you think would get people to donate to your fundraiser, absolutely use that one. If you have an image that you think would be helpful, go for it. So I would ask that for the GoFundMe page and for on my Facebook page, I am going to have one image that's like the unifying image for each of our individual efforts. But posts about your fundraiser and your effort, I would say personalize those absolutely as much or as little as you want to.
Wonderful. So I'm hoping right now that people are thinking they want to help, but they're not sure how. So I think we've identified two ways that they could help. If they're in a position to start something like this in their local community, what is the first step that they would do?
That is such a great question. And thank you for asking it because if they don't know how to do that step, then it can't get off the ground. So right now, I have a GoFundMe page and I have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. The best way to do it, I think, would be through Facebook. And Facebook, all you have to do is search for Save Restaurants, Feed Nurses. And it's a group. You go to that page, you hit the send email button. It's right there on the top. That sends an email directly to me. And then I can email the materials directly to you so that you can get started. It will be the blueprint and all the templates that you need. All the templates. I say it like there's so many. I think there's 2 or 3. So, yeah, it's not too monumental. Like we said before, it's something, but it's not crazy. It's not a crazy it's not a crazy mountain of work to climb. So yeah, that's it really. Go to Save Restaurants, Feed Nurses on Facebook. Go check it out. You can vet me. I think you should. If you're thinking about signing up to do something like this, you should look at what I've put together thus far and decide if you want to do it. And then hit the send email button and I'll send you all the materials you need to get started.
Wonderful. That is awesome. Now, if somebody wants to help, but they don't have the bandwidth to do this, they could go to your GoFundMe page and make a donation.
Absolutely. They could do that. And then I'm hoping once this gets going, on that Facebook page, there's an events tab right at the top. Anytime you go to a group page, it's like home, about, events, contact, that kind of thing, and the banner along the top of the page. And if you hit events, ideally, what I'm picturing is that list is going to grow and grow as more work from home nurses sign up to do a fundraiser in their area. So let's say you see this project, you live in Louisville, Kentucky, so let's say, and you see this project that's going on in Boulder or Los Angeles, and you think, oh, I don't know about those, but oh, there's one that's going on in Ohio, and that feels close to me. So as a person who wants to give, you'd have your pick of which event feels the most meaningful to you. Maybe you spent a lot of time on a med surge unit, so that's a unit you want to give to. And if you see a med surge unit on that list of events, you go to that one and donate there. So that's one way. Another way is, let's say you don't have the bandwidth yourself, you've heard someone talking about how they want to do something. You can spread the word, share links with them, share GoFundMe pages with them. And I think sometimes word of mouth is one of the best ways to make action happen. So I would say that. Do you know a work from home nurse who would be interested in doing this? Do you know a hospital unit that could really use the love and maybe putting them together? There's that way. And let's see what else. I think those are the main ones. If you have any other ideas, Deanna, I'll take them.
No, I think you've covered a lot. So there's basically two ways. Start it in your area. And I'm thinking if you didn't want to do this yourself, you could team up with maybe a buddy and the two of you could do this together as a project. It would be a wonderful project.
Oh,
Go ahead.
What a fantastic
Yeah.
idea.
And I'm even thinking for the
That
children, like I always like to involve my children in community projects. And this would be something that I would love to, they can set up the Facebook group and they can do little things like that could really help. And it would be a wonderful project to do together with your children if you're in the house with them a lot and you need something to do together that is bonding, that is not playing video games and watching TV and that type of thing. So that's another idea.
Oh my gosh, that I'm so glad we're talking because this is exactly, I really feel this way. I love teamwork. I love teamwork because I certainly don't have all the good ideas. I have a couple maybe, but I hadn't really thought about that. And I, I think that's a fantastic idea. Kids can be a great help. And I think they do want to be helpful. A lot of kids really do want to be helpful.
Yeah.
So
And I think if
I
they could
love
see
that.
that amount, if they helped set up the GoFundMe page and they see the amount that's coming in and they know that they're actually helping these people, I think it would be great. And the restaurants, maybe it's a restaurant they love. One question I do have for you is this, like when you do the GoFundMe and you have a goal that you want to reach, is this like one meal? Is this a meal for a whole day and all three shifts or two shifts or however many shifts there are? Is this a meal for a week? Like, how are you doing that?
So that's a great question. And basically, as the work from home nurse who coordinates one of these projects, you try to find out in your initial contact with your hospital person and your restaurant person. You find out from your restaurant person how much does one meal cost. So let's say it's just for ease of math. Let's say one meal is going to be $10. And then you find out from your hospital how many people are we feeding each delivery, and let's say it's 10 people. That gives you an idea. If you want to make just one delivery and you feel like that's all I can really do, you want to raise $100. But what I would say is be optimistic, realistic, but optimistic about how much money you might be able to raise. Then you look at your social network and how many people do you know and how many people do you think have it to give and might throw $5 your way or $10 or $20 your way. You set a fundraising goal, and let's say you raise $500. I'm really talking small here. I really think a lot of people might be able to do more than that, but I'm just trying to be easy with the math on the fly. So that means you could make 5 deliveries. And I would say really that what your question, that number depends on how much does each meal cost, how many people are we feeding, and how much money do we raise. I think the more money you raise, the more you help the restaurants, the more you feed the hospital staff, and the better off we all are. So I'd say go for it on your fundraising efforts, and however much you raise, that's how big your effort is. That's how much you can do. So I think it will vary greatly from project to project. And I also think don't worry about it too much. You do the best you can. And even if you make one delivery for one unit and you order one round of meals from one restaurant, that makes a difference. That is helpful. And that could really give your nurses that lift that they need to just make it through a little bit longer, go a little bit further. And then the other part of the ripple effect that I hadn't mentioned is that let's say maybe it's from a restaurant that the nurses on the unit have not patronized before, and now they have a meal from them, and the next time that they can go out to eat or order some takeout, they're thinking, oh, we ordered from this restaurant they gave to us in the pandemic. I want to give some business back to them. So it all keeps going, and in small ways and big ways makes our communities stronger.
I love that. I would love to see, I mean, I agree you have to start small, but I would love to see like a whole month of giving where maybe every Monday it was the Chinese restaurant and every Tuesday it was the Italian restaurant and every Wednesday it was like, and just like for 4 weeks in a row. Just,
Yes.
yeah, I can see it turning into something big and something wonderful and something to where these nurses are really feeling very supported because with everything else that they're dealing with, they don't have to worry
Uh,
about packing their lunch or where are they eating or ordering out because they don't have time to stop and eat. We all know what it was like to be a floor nurse and how many shifts we went through where we didn't stop to eat. And that wasn't during a pandemic. So
right,
if we
right.
can just make it easier for them by saying, here's the food, run in and take a bite, go do what you have to do, run
Hmm.
and take another bite, and that's what we can do for them, then I'm all in. And I love
Yes.
this. I love what you're doing. I'm really thinking that a lot of nurses, whether they are remote nurses or not, are going to want to get involved in this because it's such a wonderful idea. And
Uh-huh.
you had given us the information, which we're going to have in the show notes, of how to reach you, next steps to take. Again, Facebook group, which is
Uh-huh.
Save Restaurants Feed Nurses. Look for the Facebook
Yes.
group. And you can just send an email, and Jill's going to go ahead and send all the information that you need to start this in your area. Or
Mhm.
if you can't do that, but you still want to give, right now she's collecting for the Colorado, is it Boulder, Colorado?
Yes.
And afterwards, she will be posting other people who decide to do this on there so that you have one place to go and you can find the hospital staff near you that you want to support.
Yes, that is absolutely right. And I would also say spreading the word is another great way to help, either organizing one of your own. And by the way, even if you're not a remote nurse, but you want to organize one of these, sure. I'm not going to say no to anybody who wants to do it. Yeah, so organize one, donate to one, or spread the word about one of these events. And I think all of these individual efforts will help a lot of people potentially all over the country. Yeah. And do you mind if I add one more thing, Deanna?
Please do.
I think safety is on everyone's mind, of course, for the pandemic. And I just want to say thank you to a lot of the organizations who did Feed the Frontlines projects at the beginning of the pandemic, because I did a lot of research on those projects to see how did they do it effectively, safely, and a lot of people were so generous with the materials that they put out about um, how to organize these things in a safe and efficient and helpful way. And so I really read about a lot of the different efforts and borrowed the best from all of them. And one thing I wanted to just assure people is that they came up with a system where they ask the restaurants to package food in individual boxes as opposed to a smorgasbord style of dining. We all know that we don't want to be doing that kind of thing during a pandemic. The restaurants that you enlist, we're going to be asking them to do individual meals in individual boxes. We're going to try to ask them to package in containers that can be reheated in a microwave, so because we know that's how we eat in the hospital. We eat on the fly when we have a second to do that. That's just an example of a few of the safety protocols that are put into place. Delivery restrictions, we're taking that into account, where we're not having delivery people go into the hospital. We're having them meet outside in the open air with masks and gloves to minimize any risk that this project could bring. We're asking restaurants not to allow anyone with any symptoms of illness prepare food or make deliveries. So I just wanted to throw in that note there that we have thought about safety and we have guidelines to address those concerns.
I love this. You really have thought of everything, and you are making it so much easier for those who want to start this in their own local area. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up for today. I would love to have you on again for a couple of things. I'd love to get just maybe in a couple months or a month or two, an update, even if it's just a short update that we record, letting everybody know how this is going, because I think it's going to do really well. And I want to, maybe you'll even have some other people you want us to focus on and highlight. And
Yeah,
also, I would love to talk to you about some of the other things that you've done. You've have quite a full life that you've had and you're still having. So I think
yeah,
there's
I saw it flash before my eyes at the beginning of at the beginning of, not the pandemic, at the beginning of our podcast.
yes. So I think it'd be interesting to get to learn more about you. So we'll definitely have you on again in the future. But we're going to have everything in the show notes for everybody so that they can reach out to you. Again, you swipe up and you in the Apple Podcast app, and you can find all the show notes, all the links that are mentioned. And so you don't have to write all this down. Don't worry if you haven't been able to take notes during this podcast. Also, you can always find everything on our website, which is thestayathomenurse.com. Click on the podcast tab. You can see all of the past episodes with the show notes there, and you'll definitely find this episode there. Okay, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Any final thoughts, Jill?
Deanna, I just wanted to say a big, huge thank you to you because I just sent you an email out of the blue a couple days ago, and you said yes to helping me promote this. If this goes well and if this project enlists a lot of participation, it will be because you helped and help me spread the word. I think that's so important. And you didn't know me at all, but you took a minute to get to know me, and you said yes, I'll support you. And so I just really appreciate it, and I hope it helps grow the project, and I really think it will. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And everybody has a part to play in this. This is my small part. You're
Yeah.
doing a lot of the heavy lifting. If there's one little thing that I can do to help this to take off. And again, I, like everybody else, has that survivor's guilt of what can we do to help those nurses that we left behind facing this pandemic, whether they're working with patients with COVID or just in the hospital, and they're dealing with a lot and we need to support them.
Yes, we have this like horrible expression in nursing called nurses eat their young, right? Where,
Yes.
but I feel like this is arguably a much better model. Like,
Yes.
how about nurses feed each other, nurses support each other as opposed to nurses eat their young? I think it's a better way to go. So,
I agree. Yes. Let's
yeah.
spread this.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you again for being on the podcast.
Okay, thanks, Deanna.
Bye bye, everybody.